All of us here at ABC News have devoted this week to hearing from you, addressing your questions, searching for solutions as we mourn Newtown as a nation. Across more than a few of our message boards, we've seen more than a few people raise concern over violent video games and the cultural effect of having so many young men living virtual lives as first-person shooters. So tonight, ABC's Neil Karlinski takes a look.
Across the country this week, America's love affair with violence is under the microscope. Two of Hollywood's hottest new releases, both shoot-'em-ups, Jack Reacher and Django Unchained.
Last chance, fancy pants.
Very well.
Canceled premieres out of respect. Then came a nighttime TV ad for the video game Hitman Absolution, which led former top Obama advisor David Axelrod to tweet, "Shouldn't we also quit marketing murder as a game?" But while the adults were asking questions, America's kids went on their daily shooting spree. It is virtual violence, in this case playing one of the most popular, profitable, and most violent games, Call of Duty, a so-called first-person shooter, because the player takes on a killer's point of view. But is this just good fun, or is an entire generation being trained and desensitized to the act of shooting people?
Some people just go crazy, just yelling.
Thomas Pantig and Stephen Lloyd are typical of many in their generation. Good jobs by day, obsessed with Call of Duty when they get home. Dr. Chris Ferguson has conducted a series of multi-year studies of 11 to 18-year-olds to find out what violent games do to them. His conclusion?
There's no evidence to suggest that exposure to violent video games is associated with violent criminal behavior.
He has a name for the outcry over violent games that sometimes follows a mass shooting. He calls it moral panic.
Whenever a new form of media comes out that particularly older generations don't use and don't understand, it's very, very common for that new media to be blamed for a variety of social ills.
Some may not like them. That's a matter of personal taste.
In the 1950s, it was comic books and a full Senate hearing over the belief that they were making America's kids turn violent.
What are we afraid of? Are we afraid of our own children? Do we forget that they are citizens too and entitled to the essential freedom to read? Or do we think our children so evil, so vicious, so simple-minded that it takes but a comic magazine story of murder to set them to murder, of robbery to set them to robbery?
By the 1980s, it was Tipper Gore versus Twisted Sister's Dee Snider over the issue of suggestive rock lyrics.
Why do you think there is so much sadomasochism and bondage in some of these new songs?
Ms. Gore was looking for sadomasochism and bondage, and she found it.
But Dr. Victor Strasberger says today's video games are different, more real, more intense than anything that's come before. He supports this American Academy of Pediatrics finding. The evidence is now clear and convincing. Media violence is one of the causal factors of real-life violence and aggression.
Kids spend an incredible amount of time with the media, 7 to 11 hours a day. They see increasingly violent media. We all acknowledge that the media have an impact. Why in this country would we spend $250 billion a year on advertising if we didn't think advertising affected people?
So whose research to believe? Who to judge? The U.S. Supreme Court already has. In striking down California's attempt at a violent video game law, the court had this to say about studies linking games to violent behavior. These studies have been rejected by every court to consider them, and with good reason. They do not prove that violent video games cause minors to act aggressively. Bonnie Ross, a mother of 2 young children with her own concerns, also happens to run one of the most successful first-person shooter games around, Halo 4. And while it's far more tame than the violent games many point fingers at, Ross's advice is the same.
What do you say to parents who worry it's too violent, it's not good for the kids?
What I recommend is your kids are going to play games, play it with them, so that you can really be there to answer questions and help them through that. And then you have to make a decision as a parent what's right for you.
Games, movies, music, comics, easy targets amidst a moral panic.
As a society, if we focus in on the wrong issue, if we focus in on something that is a red herring, that is not going to help anybody, that can really distract the national conversation from serious issues.
I'm Neil Karlinski for Nightline in Seattle.